What's up, guys? It's your boy, the
Guy from Sinfield.
and
I know
today
who
we're gonna be playing
joined
Fortnite.
No,
As you
I'm
can
not
s-
buying the Evo for
free.
Gonna be playing with some gay homosexuals and a black guy.
Wait, I get a free month of Discord Nitro. What? Duolingo's giving me free Discord Nitro.
I don't have it.
So this you can see the stream setup here, guys. It's really good.
just
Yeah.
play the game.
Minnesota.
We gotta wait
Or
for
just
mo-
Come on,
Too much
come on.
lollygagging
Yes.
around.
Wait, actually, what the hell? Dude, I just got
Hang on.
Discord. Do I have Discord set up? Yay.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Did I just get
What does
free
that
Discord
mean?
Nitro?
Dude, what does that mean, Discord? Does that mean the call is not encrypted? Does that mean someone's spying on us?
Yes.
It wasn't functioning properly.
That's nice.
Oh, by the
Oh, it's
it did.
trying to do that. Okay, I don't want to put in my credit card information. Okay, where is Zesty Ban?
Can I have it?
Esteban, open Fortnite faster, you slow.
Do you want to give me your credit card information?
So true.
I love Gangnam Style.
Why are we retarded?
Yeah,
You can't say that on stream. You're gonna get me banned.
yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna
I'm
get
making a
him banned
YouTube
from
video.
I asked, forgot you were streaming. Sorry, faggy.
You're gonna get me banned.
Don't get him banned, then
What
I'll
the
have to
Sigma?
share my
What
channel.
the Sigma? What the Sigma?
How I've done this before. How do I make it
Sigma?
scroll?
What the Sigma?
The chimichanga is gonna blow up.
The
Same.
black.
Huh?
I requested to join.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I'm still setting up my epic stream.
Invite him.
Hello.
Invite him. Invite him. Invite him. Let's play
Oh, I have
squads.
I have
Let's
a
play squads. Let's
I
play
have-
squads.
Let's play Reload.
I
We're
couldn't.
not gonna. Okay.
I
fine.
couldn't join your party. Oh no. Hang on, one second.
Okay, guys,
Hang
let's
on,
play
hang on, one
reload
second.
now. It's rewind time. It's rewind time. Why am I echoing?
Hang on one second.
Hang on
one second.
To put on my sweat
to
skin.
put on my sweat skin.
Wait, why am I echoing?
Matthew, can you
Whoa.
stop messing with your streaming so we can play?
Okay,
Dude,
fine.
Okay, someone's echoing out of me. Who?
It's
why do you have
Esteban.
your mic on?
What?
Esteban. Esteban, I'm gonna mute you. Sorry.
I forgot I had it on
I have
last
to mute you
night.
again.
He had it on because we were playing with Aaron.
Guys.
Oh, sweet.
Hang on, let me pull up
What do you think about my flying
the stream on my
microwave?
phone so I can see the chat. Because I know people are gonna be
Do
chatting.
you like my?
For real, for real.
Is there anybody watching your stream?
I don't think so.
I'm gonna comment the N-word on your stream.
Bet.
What the Sigma?
Bet.
Send it to me. Send it to me.
Actually, wait, I can't do that
Sorry.
Position my background.
because I have a personal Google account. You know what?
All right, guys. Who's ready
Okay, we're
to?
traveling to
I'm
server.
still doing it.
Ready to serve. Ooh, I have rubber bands.
Who's ready to lose?
Guys. Post
Oh,
in
okay.
chat if you've eaten.
Battery song. I searched battery. Really? I'm that smart. I'm
I
that
have a microwave with a chimichanga.
Oh, you're making
Look
one
at
too.
that. Look how-
Hang on.
I have
hate
a flying microwave.
chimichangas. You're
Nobody
wrong.
talk
But
about
I
how there's a
searched
flying
it.
microwave right now. Of course you hate chimichangas. You think salt is spicy.
That's like the whitest
Oh
thing
no,
you've
it's
ever
gonna
said.
explode.
Matthew, you're being scammed so hard. You need to change your name.
What?
I'm gonna eat your.
Damn, out of battery
my
life.
chimichanga's on fire.
It's on fire.
Oh, it's because
Taco.
your tinfoil
Taco.
on.
El Taco Benito. El Taco Benito.
Because I'm Mexican.
Shut up.
I'm Mexican too.
I was just
You
not.
are.
I thought
Yeah,
you were. I thought you were like Muslim or some shit.
No, I'm Mexican Indian.
Oh.
I'm Mexican, Italian, Indian.
Motherfucker's Italian.
That's way too many races. I can't.
Wait, wait.
Mexico.
Hang on.
Meatball.
Wait, I need to add a chat box after this game so you can see the
What?
chat.
Why would you guys drop so early? You can go really down with the glider in this mode.
Travel
What's
distance
that?
while
What's
being
that?
airborne.
Oh, are you telling me an entire squad is
I'm shocking.
going here?
Why
No.
the fuck am I lagging already? God damn.
Guys,
Hate.
bro,
Those
I have
black
a
people.
rocket launcher.
Wait, I want that. Oh, I want the purple one. Can I
No.
give you the? Can I give you the green one for the purple one?
Oh wait,
I don't
hang
have
on.
a purple.
Wrong emote. Wrong emote. Wrong emote.
Oh wait.
No.
Okay, I
If it
can't watch your
works.
stream. I just can't do it. You're killing my
It's a
poor
flying
guy.
microwave.
Ooh, I
I'd
got
be
the
screwing-
Vector, but worse
I'd be
looking.
scooting. I'd be scooting, ready to take your Putin, just like the president in Russia. You know. I
That's
love.
not very Sigma, you know.
Shut your goddamn mouth, Marcus, or else I
You're
will.
being kind of mean, you know.
Uh,
You know, being a bully
I'm
isn't.
scooting and looting, like Putin.
Being a bully is awesome.
What are you doing?
I'm scooting. I'm scooting
Why
and
am
looting.
I still locked?
You
in?
know what?
Like
I'm
Vladimir
stealing
Putin.
your loot, Matthew. Oh, there's a mammoth pistol.
I'd be scooting. I'd be. Oh shit.
I would really appreciate a shotgun right
Oh
now.
fuck, guys. Hey, hey. Are you alive? Oh wait, no, he's
Matthew.
low, he's low.
You're a valued member of our team.
He's low. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. Oh wait, no.
Go help
No,
our
I'm
teammate.
dead.
Why would you do that with this Sigma?
Cat and
Real
dog.
quick.
Bazinga! Suck my dick.
Okay.
Why did you say okay to that? Okay, I love hit scan because I hit that instantly.
Ah! I missed!
Oh, no, bro.
I got way too angry at that.
You get him?
They have one
Okay,
more
'cause he-
teammate. He's probably like.
Motherfucker, it's squads, not
alive.
trios.
Murder
No,
on
I
the
thought you guys
dance
killed 3
floor.
people already. Oh, a charge
Oh, I
shot.
killed one.
Oh, I want that shotgun. Can I have that shotgun? I want
No,
the.
I'm
I want the
taking-
charge.
Hey, you guys totally shouldn't give me rocket ammo.
Don't
No,
give
he has
him
a
rocket
rocket.
ammo. He's just gonna
Yeah, don't give him
suicide
rocket
bomb
ammo.
Actually, yeah,
I
you
just
can get
realized
the
all
charge
my-
shotgun after I get back.
I just
to you.
realized all my weapons have.
I just got a legendary.
Okay, you can't get the charge shotgun
Yeah.
because Matthew took it.
Oh, I thought you meant me.
It's fine. I just
No,
got a
Matthew.
legendary SMG.
Mosmo was the one who asked for it.
No, it's fine. I have. I have
Oh
a cool gun.
Can I have the hammer AR, please?
I did
Please,
not do that.
No.
please, can I have the... Why would you do that? I'm on your team.
Dude,
I
I need
can't
a
even
long-range
build.
weapon. I have an SMG and a shotgun.
And I.
What's going on,
I
ladies?
also have a poor internet
I
connection.
be
so
scooting
this
and
is
looting just like Vladimir Putin.
For real!
I mean,
Yeah, that would have killed someone, mostly.
Same, I would've if I had the chance.
What?
I'd be scooting and looting just like Vladimir Putin.
I'd be pooing like Vladimir pooing.
I want the submachine. I want
The
that
scar!
Scar
scar?
from
I have a
that
scar
one
on my
movie
eyelid because I cut open my eyelid.
based.
Oh, I thought you said you have a scar on your island.
Yeah, 'cause I cut open my eyelid.
Yeah, he cut open his
Why?
island.
Why did
Why-
you cut over your island? Why would you do that?
Why would you cut your
Oh.
island?
Why would you cut
That
open
wasn't
your island
intentional,
like
but
that?
it was intentional.
How do you accidentally cut your island? It's an
It
island.
wasn't me who did it. It was my dog. I was chilling
Your
with my
cut-
dog.
cut-
and
Whoa,
he
why-
started running,
Well, your
and it
dog's really
ran
powerful
over
to be
my
able to.
eyelid.
Why would he?
Stepped on my eye, and his claw went into my eyelid.
Wow. So your dog is so big that he crushed your island.
Oh, Esteban's in a fight.
No, I'm
Yes,
not.
my Fortnite island.
Yes.
That's over here, boy. Let me touch you.
Wanna
Got
make
him.
a Fall Guys
Stop
map?
touching people. That's kind of
Bullet.
gay.
Yeah, that's my job.
Bullet.
Yeah, it's his job to be gay, not yours.
All right. Where's you at, boys?
Me.
It's not proper grammar.
Okay. Behind me.
Haha, haha, I shot him in the ass.
Hey, that was my kill, by the way. So you didn't get it. You got an assist.
Loser.
No, I did get it. So
Ooh.
shut that
I got
skibbity
it.
up.
Loser.
Shut the
Alright, I'm
skibbity
Fortniting.
up, you skibbity dum dum.
Guys, look what I have.
Do you have a
Guys,
dildo?
we need to stay together-ish.
And it's vaguely shaped that way.
What?
We've lost it.
What?
We just we just begun.
Do
How
not
we
go
already-
into Tilted. Do not go into Tilted.
I'm gonna
Fuck
tilt
this.
to the towers. Just like
Twin Towers.
We need to go around Tilted.
Am I gonna get
Who's
canceled?
Bro shooting at? There?
Holy
Right
shit!
there. I hit him.
I want to kill
Or I
him.
hit him
Is that a guy
twice.
there?
I have my murderous intent.
Can I get your murderous superintendent?
So
I
true.
probably should have mobility, but I have 3 med kits and 4 chug splashes.
You are a fucking nut.
There's a guy
Dude.
over there, I think.
Almost none of you guys carry
Maybe
heals.
Schizo.
Guys.
Oh yeah, I
have
think he
3
went
med
inside.
kits
He's inside
and
right
I
now.
have 3 med kits and 2 splash.
Dumbass.
Unironically
Sit
killing
there.
myself after that shot.
Oh, you freaking me. Ow! What the heck?
No!
Bro!
Careful, there's
Yeah.
someone up here, probably.
The pier? P-tier?
P.
Poutine?
Diddy. Guys,
Heat up.
In the morning feeling like P. Diddy.
The
You like
news?
minors.
Are they inside?
I don't know.
I'm getting sniped. I'm getting shot. I'm not getting sniped.
Hey, what's going
To
on,
quote,
fam?
I think,
Uh,
Massimo, don't go into
What?
Tilted Towers.
Oh, I'm dead. Matthew, stay alive for us. Just get out of there.
Wee. Oh.
Okay. We are gaming.
Oh, there's someone there.
What?
Charge shot on that.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Guys,
Oh,
No.
I hate the charge shotgun, and I'm going to quit my life.
Ready up. Time to torture ourselves even more.
come on.
I don't get how, like, people use... Oh wait, SMGs are actually really hard to hit with.
Well, so am I.
You're hard. Why did I think that skin was Laura Croft?
I think you're stupid.
I think I am.
Fort Bite.
Minnesota.
You died to that guy? Sorry, he wasn't paying attention at all. He didn't even bother to turn around.
Okay. Chat. I have a random music box I got on my desk.
Hold on, chat.
Hello, chat.
Minnesota.
Hold on.
Minnesota.
Mmm.
Are you still live, Matthew?
No.
Okay, good.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Oh yeah, it's playing.
Minnesota! Minnesota!
Oh shoot!
Minnesota!
You should watch this stream
Minnesota!
right
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Confirm that I deny that.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
Purple AR.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Send the screen thing.
Minnesota!
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Minnesota!
That's not nice.
Minnesota!
Yeah, from Moss, from Counter-Strike.
Minnesota! Minnesota!
Yeah, she got
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Holy mackerel! It's
Minnesota!
a sweat.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
No,
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
I'll take a gold heavy shotgun.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Rare chests.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
I suck at aiming. You just launched him towards me!
Minnesota!
I'm just too
Minnesota!
What?
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Well, stop crawling away!
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
I hit this game.
Minnesota! Minnesota!
Finally, I actually hit someone. That was a headshot.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Bro has the aim of a toddler.
Minnesota!
Esteban, you almost just blocked
Minnesota!
yourself. Where?
Minnesota!
Where are you?
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
Listen to me.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
Where are you on, like, I mean, like, where are you on?
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Alright, going for that.
Minnesota!
That should hit.
Minnesota!
I hate you.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
26 eliminations.
Minnesota!
Oh my lordy lord.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Pops off.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
Wait, guy in the hill.
Minnesota!
Over there, he just went up.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
Can't.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
96.
Minnesota! Minnesota!
I'm also down.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
No, I'm not good.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Got it somewhere that way. Over there.
Minnesota! Minnesota!
I don't have a med kit. That'll do.
Minnesota!
The game.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
You jinxed it! You idiot!
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
So I want to see my match stats for that, because that was absurd.
Minnesota!
Match stats. I got 13
Minnesota! Minnesota!
kills. I pop off with that.
Minnesota! Minnesota!
Yeah.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
Oh my God, the stream god. No, I should have been streaming this normally. Now my
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
No,
Minnesota!
That's major time loss.
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
This game.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Wait,
Minnesota!
one's dead.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
No,
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
If you land on the ground,
Minnesota! Minnesota! Minnesota!
it's possible.
Minnesota!
It's too
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
It's a good song.
Minnesota!
I messed up the time.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
That was
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Oh no, major time loss, major time
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
This one's kind of a
Minnesota!
level 2.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Holy crap.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Okay.
Minnesota!
Yeah.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Whoa, whoa.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
What?
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
This is the one killer.
Minnesota!
Speaking of which,
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
so much.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Stop doing that game.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
I'm
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Like a slightly
Minnesota!
off of
Minnesota! Minnesota!
What? I hate this level! I hate level 5!
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Yeah.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!
Really good time. I was on pace for 6 minutes.
Minnesota! 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 Minnesota!